Welcome everyone, Dr. Lindner here, and in this lecture, we're going to be looking at the muscles of the upper extremity. Hopefully at this point, you've reviewed some of my videos that go over the ranges of motion where I actually demonstrate what shoulder flexion looks like, shoulder extension, shoulder internal and external rotation, shoulder abduction and adduction, horizontal adduction and abduction. It's really important to know what these actions look like so that you're not just doing pure memorization. There are certain muscles that it's really important to know what their actions are. And if you can perform them on yourself, then you're not really memorizing anything, you are understanding it. Okay, so please make sure that you review some of my videos that go over ranges of motion of the upper extremity, as well as ranges of motion of the lower extremity. Okay, I'm going to take a look at these two thumbnails first, because it's going to be looking at the scapula. Looks like this one is the scapula from the posterior, because we can see the spine of the scapula here. And then this would be the scapula from the anterior. So let's see if we can zoom in on this one first. Now, let's get comfortable with the way this is oriented so you understand. This is the upper extremity. This is the scapula. And you can see it's on this peg. It's on a stand. So what's moving up in this direction is going to be the arm, and then way up at the top would be the fingers. So we're looking at this kind of upside down, okay, because that's the way the model is on the stand. So let's figure this out. This right here is the spine of the scapula. This right here is the vertebral border or medial border of the scapula. All right. So once we find the spine of the scapula, the muscle above it, right? Remember, we're looking at this upside down. So when I say above, I don't mean here. I mean above an anatomical position, which would be here. The muscle along the supraspinous fossa is the supraspinatus. And then the muscle inferior to the spine of the scapula is another rotator cuff muscle called the infraspinatus. And these three arrows right here indicate the infraspinatus muscle. Now, just inferior, yes, I agree, it's superior in the picture, but anatomically speaking, inferior to the infraspinatus, you see this green line right here, there's going to be the Teres Minor muscle. So these three, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and Teres Minor, those are the sit muscles. There are sits, S-I-T-S. The sits, S-I-T, and the S is on the opposite side for the subscapularis. Those four would be the rotator cuff muscles. But on the posterior aspect, we can see three of the four rotator cuff muscles. Again, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, Teres Minor. Now, Teres Major is not a rotator cuff muscle, but you can see that there's this little web, this little triangle, or this little space right here between Teres Minor and Teres Major. And there's a belly of a muscle and a tendon that travels or gets pierced right between Teres Minor and Teres Major. And this muscle right here is the long head of the triceps. The long head of the triceps brachii gets pinched between or sandwiched between Teres Minor and Teres Major. Again, Teres Major is not a rotator cuff muscle. Supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and Teres Minor are three of the four rotator cuff muscles. These three muscles all have a common insertion. The common insertion is going to be on the greater tubercle of the humerus. Again, these three insert on the greater tubercle of the humerus. Okay, where does the supraspinatus originate? Supraspinous fossa. Where does the infraspinatus originate? Infraspinous fossa. Okay, there's another muscle that originates on the fossa, but it's the one on the anterior side that we will take a look at. Now, supraspinatus abducts the shoulder. It abducts the shoulder. Supraspinatus abducts the shoulder. Infraspinatus externally rotates the shoulder. The infraspinatus externally rotates the shoulder. And so does Teres Minor. So infraspinatus and Teres Minor, both of these are external rotators. So you have AB for abduction, EX for external rotation, EX for external rotation again. Okay. Teres Minor and Teres Major are antagonistic to one another. So if Teres Minor is an external rotator, what would Teres Major be? An internal rotator. They're antagonistic. Okay. Teres Minor, external rotator. Teres Major, internal rotator of the shoulder. And again, when we say shoulder, we mean arm. When we say arm, we mean humerus. So you have to know what's moving here. Okay, so let's summarize. We got supraspinatus, infraspinatus, Teres Minor. Those are three of the four rotator cuff muscles. All three of them share a common insertion. The common insertion site is on a greater tubercle of the humerus. Between Teres Minor and Teres Major, there's a muscle that gets sandwiched between the two bellies of those muscles, and that's the long head of the triceps brachii. Okay. Let's go back and look at the same region, but from the anterior. So now, from the anterior, we can see the fourth rotator cuff muscle, which is the subscapularis. Again, this is the vertebral border or medial border. And here, along the subscapular fossa, is this large muscle called the subscapularis. Okay, now the subscapularis, its action is going to be internal rotation. Same exact action as Teres Major. They are both internal rotators of the shoulder. Okay, now if you ever get asked actions, and you will on the exam, you don't want to write, if we're pointing to the subscapularis and it's asking for action, you don't want to write internal rotation of the shoulder. That's a lot to write. You write the joint first and then the action. So you would simply put shoulder, internal rotation, shoulder, internal rotation, instead of writing internal rotation of the shoulder. Simply, you would put shoulder, internal rotation. Okay. Here's the clavicle. So here's part of the pectoralis major. And this right here is the coracoid process. So what do we see attaching to the coracoid process? There's two muscles. There's this one here called the coracobrachialis. And then there's this one here, that's the biceps brachii, but it's the short head, right? Biceps means two. There's a long head and a short head. So it is the short head only, that originates on the coracoid process. Okay, there are a total of 3 muscles that actually attach here, but this picture is showing 2: coracal brachialis. The muscle is named by its origin and insertion. It originates on the coracoid process, inserts on the arm, brachium. Then you have the short head of the biceps, brachii. And the third muscle that's not here is the pec minor. Pec minor also has an attachment on the coracoid process.